Thank you. So now let's move to, because we've had the people from venues Ōtautahi waiting for us who are now here, item 18, the venues Ōtautahi Q3 performance report. So if I could invite the representatives from venues Ōtautahi to the table, please. Thank you. And Linda, did you want to join them at the table as well? Thank you. So item 18, Q3 performance report. Any comments that you'd like to make to start off?
All right, do you want to start, Linda, or shall I start? All right. Thank you, everyone. Nice to see you all again. All right, so just to talk to our Q3, so the 9 months of the year, it's as you'll see in our report, it has been a positive year, albeit, well, a positive performance, albeit a relatively bumpy year at times. So we are $1.7 million ahead of budget, but important to note that the budget was prepared during alert level 4, so back in COVID. So the assumptions that we were making at the time were different to what has ensued. We had thought that events wouldn't return till much later in the year last year, and they did come online much sooner. And we also had anticipated that the Trans-Tasman bubble may open sooner. So there were a few assumptions that really were quite fundamental to how the performance has tracked. But obviously, and we've talked about it a lot, at the time we did downsize the business by 60% back in June and farewelled around 50 members of our team. But at the same time, we also reviewed all of our fixed overheads. We also brought our catering in-house and changed our model to a local procurement model. And we now have a really variable cost model, which means that we are lean, agile, and able to respond and be reactive to change, the inevitable change that will ensue. And so that really is in behind the positive performance, as well as the number of events, particularly in this last period, and the nature of those events being more high yield items. We also had an unbudgeted Super Rugby final, which was also helpful. But it is important to be mindful of the continued volatility of the COVID-19 environment. And if you look at our first week in March, we were returned to alert level 2 that had a 60% impact on our revenue for that week. We weren't eligible for the wage subsidy. The criteria had been changed. But it does bounce back quickly. It's just the volatility of it. And so we are mindful, particularly if you look at Wellington, right as we speak, events been cancelled yesterday. We had Wellingtonians pulled out of conferences at the Air Force Museum. So we just have to be mindful that we need to maintain this agility and our ability to react and respond as we move through this environment. And the other thing of note really is another risk for us as we look forward is Te Pai opening. And that will likely have an impact on us, and we just need to be mindful of that. We have upside later in the year with the delayed opening, but it is something we need to be prepared for in the coming years. And I think that's pretty much me. Dale, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think you've covered off very well in regard to what we've seen of late. So and certainly just reflecting March and the change and what's happening in Wellington now.
Thank you. Moving to questions, Yanni.
Yeah, and just want to acknowledge the work that you've done, like the going to a local supplier and local procurement. I think it's really positive. Just in light of that, I just had a question about the ticketing. I see that you've got some revenue from ticketing. Are you able just to give a bit of a snapshot about if there's any plans around the future of ticketing using like local suppliers? And I've just had some feedback from some people that I don't know if you still have the box office at the town hall where people can go on and actually get the tickets in person. But just really interested in any I guess looking forward around the future of that process.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Dave.
No.
So as and when we can, we'll always have a local view on where we procure all of our services and products. That's not something we're able to do now. We're under contract. But it is certainly something as we come out of those and we look to procure those type of services and all others, we'll always have a local lens.
Right.
And with the box office, we don't have it permanently open, but it is open on event days, at event nights.
I guess just that whole digital exclusion and how hard it is for some people who may not have access to technology to actually get tickets.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I mean, I think that is something that is still offered as far as the opportunity to be able to either digitally on mobile phones or actually be able to collect tickets. So that's still that's still something that's available to people to meet their requirements in that way.
And just reading through the report, so you're still doing work around that whole community access, but that hasn't kind of come to a conclusion where it could be reported back, but that's still a priority for you.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So increased access to and connection with the venues for the community is fundamental. The prioritisation framework is a complex piece of work, and we're still working through that with Linda and the team. But it's probably helpful for us to know what level of breakdown and what information might be helpful to give you assurance of where we're heading and what we're doing. And that's probably something we can do offline, maybe in a separate.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam?
Yeah, probably one thing that jumps to mind is around the convention centre opening and still the lack of international travel effectively. Have you quantified that, or do you know how that's going to play out?
Look, I mean, we're really making some assumptions at the moment because, the convention centre, when it was, proposed and was always about targeting big international conferencing. And the impact for us really is because that's not so available. We are playing in the same domestic and national market. And that's where we're acknowledging that it's more significant of a risk for us now than it was perhaps pre-COVID.
Yeah. But do you know what that's going to do in terms of any business or anything? I'm just trying to understand, is there a financial implication for us as a result of that?
We have considered that as part of with the event forecast and the pipeline that we have available to us. So we've got some understanding of what that means, certainly for the second half of this year.
So that's continually revised. I mean, because it's just, I guess a year ago we probably thought we're kind of maybe back to normal, but we're certainly nowhere near that yet. So you are, that's obviously top of mind and you're working through it.
Very much so, and that's in line with the statement of intent that we have through to June 24, where we've looked at our event forecast and the implications of that.
Yeah, we've put a contingency in and acknowledged that in our forecast for the next 3 years.
Okay.
And, we've got real-time examples of things that, long-standing events that have shifted from our venues to Fire.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right, so we've got a recommendation in front of us, which is simply to note the Q3 performance report. So I'm happy to move that. Pauline, you will second. And really just acknowledging the uncertain times in which we're all working, but particularly those running venues and in the events industry are working. It has been a very turbulent and uncertain time, and clearly there's a risk of some ongoing volatility. You pointed out, situations that we've seen in Melbourne, Sydney, and in Wellington, of course, as well, with changes in alert levels, and I guess that contributes to that ongoing volatile environment that we're working in. But of course, at the same time, it's notable that you've made some excellent changes, in my view, to the procurement policy with a focus on local suppliers, local food suppliers, service providers, probably at exactly the time that was of most value to them, when their business also was affected by COVID and the changes and challenges that brought. And at the same time, that variable cost model has probably had more value in the current environment where it is so very volatile and there is so much uncertainty than the value that it would have in more peaceful times. But, certainly that's a couple of excellent bits of work that you've done that will have ongoing value now and well into the future. So thank you for coming along to present the report to us today. Thank you for the work that you're doing in what we acknowledge to be particularly challenging times. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any further debate before I put the motion? All right, so I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. So now we'll move back to working through the main body of